Today, we have an exciting program for you. Our next session will be about, is really geared towards employees, teams, and recruiting, managing your staff and contractors while you are working from home when you're still running your business. You know, a lot of people are working from home now, and we felt that it was absolutely necessary to address this topic, how you really remain productive while you are working from home. So if you did not get a chance to join us for our last session, it was about cyber attacks. And that one was really good. You could always go to our website to check out our past webinars. That one in particular, I had a client this week that was experiencing some cyber attacks where they got an order in and it was not from the government entity that they thought it was. So that in itself is reason to at least take a look at that topic, how to protect yourself while you're working from home during a cyber attack. My name is Sidoni Naismith, and I am a business consultant who manages the Broward office under the MBDA COVID-19 Recovery Initiative, which is an MGill and Associates project that's funded by the CARES Act grant under the U.S. Department of Commerce, MBDA. So Black Swan Events, Inc. is the management and consulting firm that runs the Broward County and East Miami area. And what that means is that we provide free technical assistance to businesses that are impacted by COVID-19. So if you are a business owner or you know someone that has been impacted, please do feel free to reach out to us, and we can start off with our consultation, our initial consultation, and then we can take it from there to see how we can provide the resources that you need in order to run your business and to grow your business. Now, I always do this where I'm wanting to find out where each person or business is joining us from. So if you don't mind, please do go ahead and let us know where you're joining us from. We're having some votes coming in, and if you're from Broward County, Miami, Palm Beach, we have some other counties within Florida, and also if you're not in Florida, let us know as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. I do see a few other people doing the poll, but I'm going to end the poll right now. And as you could see, Broward has it today, and then the Palm Beaches. So we're only in Broward and Palm Beach for this webinar, which is great because we love when our local South Floridians join us. We want to help our immediate community, so that's wonderful. Now, the reason why you are here, of course. Today we have a lot to cover, really. We have some experts who are educators here, and they educate in different ways in different areas. I learned yesterday through another webinar that I was joining that when you are a teacher, a coach, a trainer, an educator, you learn twice because you are preparing yourself to teach. So this set of business owners and two very great, well-talented individuals will be running the program today. They'll start off with a presentation followed by a Q&A session, and it can be interactive depending on whether or not the audience wants to participate, which means that we will allow the audience to chime in via your microphone. We can unmute you and you can ask your questions, or you can answer questions that may come up from the presentation. This part will be handled towards the end of the presentation. So please go ahead and ask your questions anyway as we go through the slides. We love when we are on a topic and you have a question on that topic, you immediately type it in so that you don't forget it and for us to be able to address it. All right, so speaking of presenters, today, Next Level Educators is joining us, and this is Dr. Mirella Baker-Bemmel and Howard Housen, and they are the owners of Next Level Educators, and they have captivated audiences all over. They have worked at conferences, expos. They've done different sessions of our local libraries and also within Florida. They have impacted private communities through the delivery of engaging, really special webinars, I would say, that stimulates your mind. And they've done all different sorts of lectures and just really good thought-provoking seminars. If you haven't joined them for one of their seminars, I have, which is one of the reasons they're here. They are so good at what they do. We are on an online virtual forum right now, which takes away a little bit of it. Their in-person is so good and so engaging. So without further ado, my goal here is to introduce you to Dr. Baker-Bemmel. Is an award-winning sociology professor who's impacted the community in different spans across a wide scale landscape that includes teaching, speaking, engaging, training, and volunteerism. Now, Professor Housen is a retired sociology professor who has his mark in higher education that spans over 7 years. The list goes on and on for these two, and I could be here forever while I am introducing them. But now let them tell you. I will turn it over to them because they are the experts and they are the reason why you are here. So if you don't mind, Howard, you can please take it from here.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone, and I'm glad you're here joining us. When Sidonie asked us to do this presentation, we thought we would kind of give you something that is traditional, do the research, then put some facts together and make the presentation. But then we said, why not give you a front row seat? Why not make you kind of a fly in the wall? Pull the curtains back a bit and have you peek through and see what is happening to us, a new company, as we try to make the transition following COVID. A little bit of background. Sidonie just mentioned to you that I'm a retired sociology professor from Broward College. And so 4 years ago, when I decided to retire, I literally walked away from almost 40 years of teaching. I love the classroom. I cherish what happened in the classroom. I enjoy the moments of aha, when all of a sudden the light bulb goes on in the student's head. I enjoy the whole interaction, somehow the ability to guide a student along the pathway of education. I enjoy all of that. But I also looked forward to retirement. And so I had the notion of absolutely having no schedules, endless grading of papers. I had a whole day to myself if I wanted to. I could watch television without feeling guilty. I could procrastinate and not worry about it, no consequences. But then it got kind of stale. I knew I missed this whole process that engages me in the classroom. And so this idea of having all that free time and all that, I realize that I do need to be engaged. I do need to have a sense of purpose, something to wake up to in the morning. And so when my colleague mentioned to me that it's possible that you could still have a portion of that, and requested that we take a look at joining together and creating a company, I absolutely went for it. And so we got together and we put our company together, created a business plan, put some marketing strategies in place, made some promotional presentations, not getting paid, attended all kinds of expos and conferences. And so in the process of creating for ourselves what we thought would make for a good operation, we employed a strategy that is used frequently by good communicators. Anybody involved in communication knows about the 3 M's. And so we structured our operation around the message, the medium, and the messenger. You see, the whole idea of the message, the content, normally doesn't change. That's fairly stable. Our medium was essentially making face-to-face presentations. We had a live audience, everything we do. And then messengers, of course, we were the messengers. But we had learned how to utilize this face-to-face connection to make for an exciting presentation. So we were the center, if you would, of the operation. And then we created a design process, one that had us, once we get a topic, we would then research that topic individually. We then meet together for a very intense planning session where we would share our research, engage in all kinds of brainstorming, do some simulation, ask a whole series of questions, and massage the information from all angles. Then we put it together. So we construct this whole program, outline what we're going to do, and then we would kind of let it rest a while. We'd actually sleep on it, if you would, making sure that we allow the program to get the benefit of our subconscious approach. Go to bed and let it simmer a bit and make sure our mind gets engaged in what was going to happen. And when we're satisfied that we have the pieces all well put together, we then would deliver. And we had carefully honed our skills in terms of what happens in that live operation. We use ourselves as part of the prop, if you would, and we would carefully make sure that we connect with the audience. We would engage them, and we would make sure we elicit from them active participation. Those were the pieces, and we absolutely enjoyed that whole process. And so we planned in 2020 that was a year that we really were going to advance and grow and expand our operations, and we were very excited about it. And then came COVID. And for me, this was a drastic change. That transition was absolutely almost crippling. You see, I had experienced now grief in two ways. I had this grief period when I retired, and then all of a sudden I was back into doing that which I love to do, and here comes COVID. And I suddenly realized that grief does not happen just because you lost somebody. But here now, COVID had dropped in my lap a lemon, and I now have to learn how to make lemonade. And so what you are seeing from us is that whole pivot and that whole transition. And I'm trying to do my best in somehow creating that lemonade out of that lemon. It is a very, very tough process. And I think Mirella will help us understand some of the things that we have to do. And I'm learning, and I'm doing far much better in terms of my adjustment to what needs to happen now, post-COVID.
So you probably recognized some of what Howard just presented in your own planning, your own business, and you had all these ideas of what 2020 was going to look like, and all of a sudden the rug was pulled from underneath you. We went through the same thing. We're typically very animated, very touchy-feely. We connect with the crowd in a way that is very personal. So it was difficult for us to now come to a point where we had to figure out what to do next. So there are definitely benefits, though, that we realized that come with working remotely. Howard and I used to meet up somewhere because I live in Palm Beach County, he lives in Broward County, so we would meet somewhere halfway. But it does mean that we have to put in the effort to get from point A to point B, get in our car, etc. But when you start to think about yourself and some of the benefits that you actually now experience because you're working from home, you might realize that you actually have improved quality of work and life because you don't have to get ready in the morning to get into your car or in the train or however you get to work normally. The travel time is no longer there. A lot of people actually say that they now feel that they're able to do their job a lot better. Their job performance and productivity has increased. Some people have trouble with office space overcrowding, and you might have been in that position. Maybe you were renting a space somewhere and you said, hey, you know what, I can deal with a small space and have cubicles. Well, now you no longer have to worry about overcrowding. It's also hopefully a distraction-free environment where you can now focus on the job at hand. Studies have also shown that there's improved retention. I mentioned the travel time is now cut, and you also see that people ask for fewer days off because they feel that they can balance it just a little bit better. So now there's increased productivity from that particular angle. But of course, when you had to make that decision how you're going to continue running your business, you had to figure out, where am I going to do it? I'm sitting here in my living room where I've set up my office. And I had to do that because we have an office space, but my husband is also working from home. So now he's using the office space, and guess what? I have a child. So he's also using going on to school online. So we now have to share a space and find a way to make that work the best way possible. Yet, if we're working, we still need to appear professional. We need to be professionals. We need to make sure that the space is free of clutter behind us. For example, you might have attended some meetings or workshops where someone is sitting in their bedroom and you can see their bed behind them, and maybe they didn't make the bed that day. So it needs to be a professional appearance. Something else that's very important that hopefully all of you have thought about is that level of security. Depending on the type of business that you're in, you might have privacy issues that you need to consider. But there's also security breaches that could happen because you're using a computer that hasn't been vetted, where maybe you didn't get to the point yet where a consultant took a look at what you can put in place to make sure that you don't have breaches otherwise. So your virtual setup is something that really takes some planning, and perhaps it takes some help from outside. But there are several things that you have to make sure that you do. Your relationships with your family members might get a little bit dicey sometimes because you're sharing space all the time. But it's so good to be purposeful about making it a healthy relationship and to maintain that healthy relationship. Unfortunately, you probably have heard of stories where people go through challenging times in their marriage, in their relationships. Divorce rates, of course, unfortunately have gone up. Domestic violence has gone up. So really it takes some intentional, work that you need to do as a couple and with your family members to make sure that those relationships remain healthy. But it's also important to set boundaries for work. We cannot and should not work all day long. Some of us, and I know sometimes I'm guilty, we find ourselves just getting a little bit more, squeezing in a few more hours because we think, hey, you know what, I'm almost done with that project. Let me just put in a few more hours. But we have to set the boundaries. If we're supposed to work from 9 to 5, turn the computer off at 5 o'clock so that you can go back to the rest of the day. And the other must do is maintaining a healthy lifestyle. We have to get up, get out of the chair, go for a walk, put in those 10,000 steps a day if you can, so that you can maintain that healthy lifestyle. I know how tempting it is to go to the refrigerator every couple of hours to see what else is in there. We know we didn't put anything in there, but we still open the door and hope that we're going to find a nice snack. Well, that snack might not be the healthiest. So making sure that we maintain a healthy lifestyle, get up, move, and eat healthy is definitely something that we all must do. And there's a golden rule. There are two that I'm going to share with you today, and this is the first one. If you have little children at home and you're supposed to take care of them, maybe it's a good idea to get a babysitter to do that while you're working. Or if you have other things that you need to take care of, make sure that you do it outside of work time, because if you are obligated to work from 9 to 5, there's an expectation that you're not going to have a child on your lap at the time that you're working and you're at a meeting. It's unprofessional, but it also takes away from your productivity. So keep this golden rule in mind. Well, there could be some problems that we need to talk about as well. Whenever you have personal issues to take care of, typically you have to go to the bank. It has to be done during the daytime when the bank is open. But we have to keep in mind that there's maybe a lunch hour built in, that would be the most appropriate time to actually do that. I mentioned earlier that that time that we put in should not stretch beyond the 40 hours, because as a matter of fact, you can also get in trouble if you're expected to work 40 hours and you put in the extra time. Then maybe as a manager, as an owner of a business, your employees might expect to be paid overtime if they're now going beyond the 40 hours. But then there's also glitches. As we were getting ready for this particular webinar, we had to make sure that the computer was working right, that the camera was properly functioning, that the background noise is kept to a limit. So those glitches, it happens, but if we can somehow control it, that will be best. So one of the problems is that sometimes we feel a loss of control. If we're not able to pivot and just go with it, we might just feel a sense of grief that Howard mentioned before. So we just need to be ready for that as a potential problem and not fall into that rut where we just feel like, oh no, it's another day of work. Let's see how we can actually pivot so that we can make it enjoyable and make the best of the situation. Now, if you are a manager, there are definitely things to keep in mind. Give people the sense that they're valued, and don't overmanage and micromanage them. There are some managers who feel that, hey, I can't trust that my worker is really on the clock for 8 hours a day. So if you're the person who's constantly checking in, sending your text messages, calling, sending another chat message to see if they're actually working, it starts to take away from the productivity, and that worker starts to feel a sense of drop, like they feel that the value that they really bring to the table is now diminishing because they maybe feel that they're not being trusted. A good tip is to over communicate. While that might sound like it's not a good thing, the more you share with your workers, the more they feel comfortable and at ease. There's nothing worse than employers not letting their employees know what's going on in the business. If things are going great, let them know. If there are concerns, let them know. If there are struggles, share that as well. So at least they know what's going on and they truly feel that they're part of the group. As an owner of a business, you might also need to consider what kind of equipment your employees are using and how they're being supported. If something goes wrong with their computer, are you going to pay for it? Is there that expectation? Or is it expected that they're going to go ahead and foot the bill for that? It's a good conversation to have. That way there's no surprise. I briefly mentioned confidentiality, but it's something that is worth mentioning again. Because if you work in the type of business where you're dealing with clients and you have them on speaker all the time, people are walking behind you and they hear all the conversations, it's not a good thing because now all their information is out there for everyone to hear. So as far as confidentiality goes, make sure that you have headphones if you're in the type of business where this is an issue, but that you also assure your clients that their information will be kept private. There should be an expectation of schedules that is shared with your employees. So again, good to know that it's good to actually have that conversation. If you expect them to work on the weekends, because now, there's that instant gratification that a lot of people are looking for. If I just sent you a text, am I expecting that you're going to text me back within 5 minutes? Or is it okay if I wait 2 hours to get back to your text? These are the types of things that are good to have a conversation about. And then lastly, it's also very good to have a nice, inclusive virtual culture. Don't just always focus on work. But when you start a meeting, just have a nice, relaxing moment where you ask your workers, how are you? And give them an opportunity to respond. So that way, they really feel that their personal issues are also of value to you because you care about them personally. So in order for you to have an effective setup at home, you need to have a designated office space. It's good to have a space where you can limit distractions in the background. The good thing is that Zoom, for example, has different backgrounds that you can use if you feel that what's behind you is not necessarily professional. So use that. Why not? It's there for us to use, so we can go ahead and use that. Keeping a record of hours worked is also a very good practice. Because if your workers don't realize that they're working beyond 40 hours, or if you are the person who has to report to a boss and you're putting in 50, 60 hours, it's good to keep a record because, as I mentioned before, we have to set boundaries. So maybe you're working overtime and not even realizing it, and you might be able to get compensated, or it's time to step on the brakes a bit and say, I'm going to actually clock out at 40 hours. Be mindful of ergonomics. How's your chair that you're sitting on? Do you have good support for your back? Are your feet stretched, or is it cramped because you now have some baskets underneath your office desk because you're running out of space and said, this is a good place for it? But if your feet you're not able to stretch them, or if they don't reach the floor, which by the way is another good tip, then maybe it's time to put some books or a little stool so that your feet can reach something, or remove the baskets that are in front of your feet that are now not allowing you to stretch your legs. But also get up frequently. Make sure that at least once an hour you're up and stretching. And then Make some agreements with your boss, or if you're the boss, make agreements with your workers so that they have full understanding of the expectations that you have for them. I mentioned to you that I have 2 golden rules, and here's the second one. Be careful of Zoom fatigue. I know I'm on meetings more than I've ever been. There's constantly someone who wants another Zoom call, and eventually it gets to be too much. So if you're the one scheduling the calls, think about whether it's really necessary to have a meeting. Maybe instead of meeting every day, it can be 3 times a week when there are important things to discuss. And when you have that meeting, make sure that you're talking about the relevant things and not the extras that are just keeping people on the phone. If this is just a meeting just because, then maybe it's time to reconsider and think that, am I micromanaging? Is that why I'm calling a meeting? So it's just really good to keep in mind that there is such a thing as Zoom fatigue. I had a conversation with someone the other day that mentioned that sometimes he has 2 Zoom calls at the same time. So he has to have 2 screens on because he has to jump from one meeting to the next. That's a little bit much. How long can we continue like that? So we have to keep all of that in mind. But there's some etiquette. When you're on a call, you're in a meeting, don't multitask because people can see you, and if they can't see you because your camera's off, when they're asking a question and you don't respond, you ask them, can you say that again? They'll know that you were doing something else. Act like it's an in-person meeting. So dress the part, show up on time, and do the things you would do just like it were a regular in-person meeting. Look professional. Make sure your backgrounds are set so that, again, you have a professional background. And if you don't, like I mentioned as a tip, to use the backgrounds that come with Zoom, for example. Check your camera, make sure it works, and make sure that it's focused on you and not something behind you that's irrelevant at that very moment. So I really hope that I provided you a lot of information that you're going to be able to use, and I put it together for you on this slide to offer you some tips for success, just to summarize it a little bit. So set a routine. When you get up in the morning, if you were to go to the office before, pretend that you're still going to the office even though you're working from home. You don't have to dress up in a suit, but at least get ready. Take your shower, get ready so that you're now shifting your mind. It's all about the mind, to get your mind ready that, hey, I'm going to work. Set some goals, but also set deadlines for yourself. Don't just think that now that we're in virtual world, things can just wait until tomorrow or the week after. Think about, the deadlines that you have to meet and set those for yourself if they're not set for you. Things that you should do is have meetings that are regular enough so that there's always a presence and we don't forget, what we look like, what each other looks like. Continue to network. Networking is an important part of what we need to do. And even though it's a little different in the virtual world, it's still very important. Setting office hours is important. But there are some things to avoid. Distractions. Limit the distractions as much as you can. Also avoid overworking. And then try to keep your personal things for after the workday is done. When the workday is over, you now have time to tend to the personal things that you need to. So that actually concludes my portion of the presentation. I wanted to share some information in case you'd like to get in touch with us. We have our phone number, email address, and website listed for you here. But I want to open it up for questions and answers and give you an opportunity to engage with us.
All right. Thank you so much for that. I am now going to, let me see if there are any questions. We do have a few questions, but I'll say this. Thank you so much for that presentation. I learned a lot. I work with my presenters all the time, and sometimes we're in the back end doing stuff, so to speak. But this presentation really just gave me a moment of clarity, for one, and also it just allowed me to just sit down and just watch your presentation, for sure. I learned a lot. I love the slide at the end, color-coded slide. It is very clear. Green is go or do. That's a great thing. And then, of course, yellow is the do, and, what to avoid would be in red. So I love that color combination that you have provided us. Now, if you don't mind, let me go ahead and start with the slides. I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off because you guys should be, the people that we are focusing on for sure. And if Howard, if you don't mind as well, we can also have you share your screen. Well, turn on your camera if you're not already. All right, so I'm going to just go ahead and get into it. Someone is asking right away, what was the most difficult aspect of the transition? And I'm not sure if the transition meaning the transition as Howard shared in the beginning, where he was talking about transitioning to retirement or transition into COVID. So Howard, if you don't mind taking this one and being, just whatever you want to share about this will be fine.
I think it was actually both, Sidoni. You have to understand that what I was giving up was nearly 40 years of being in the classroom, where I experienced this whole notion of aha moments. A moment when all of a sudden a student gets it. The light bulb goes off and they get it. Moments when what is happening in the classroom all of a sudden makes sense to what is happening in the real world. That's what I was giving up. And if I take you back to the 3 M's, in the notion of medium, we were having live audiences. We had a chance to see people face to face. Now I can't do that. That's what I'm giving up. And so that transition was very difficult for me. Nearly 40 years of that experience, all of a sudden, it is gone. And when I said I experienced grief, I was mourning what I had. That's quite a transition.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. There's a lot that goes into it with planning and all that. So really, thank you for sharing that. I'm pretty sure that there's some business owners that are out there that have gone through retirement and the transition of owning their own business and now working from home. So thank you for that. We have another question, and Howard, being that you are you started, please go ahead and if you don't mind addressing this one. Will the society ever go back to the traditional office arrangement? What do you think? And then if Mirella, you could also chime in after Howard with that.
That's a tough one, Sidoni. So let me give you a perspective that comes from sociology and psychology. I think as humans, we are wired for connection. We need that social interaction. If you'll permit me, let me share with you a very fascinating story. And those of you who've taken psychology, you might have heard about Maslow hierarchy of needs. That somehow it indicates that the whole notion of living is at the first level. But what I want to get to is they did some research in orphanages, and children were dying, but they couldn't figure out why. They were not dying because they didn't have enough to eat. They didn't have shelter and all of that. What they discovered was these kids were literally dying because they didn't have enough human touch. And so to live is to be touched. I suspect and I believe that we cannot adequately survive unless we have this human connection. We can't live this way for very long. So I predict that we have to go back to some form of the traditional office arrangement where people have not just the opportunity to work and be productive, but a chance to make connection with their fellow workers. That's my prediction. And part of it, maybe it's my wish.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for your perspective on that. Mirella, if you don't mind sharing yours.
Sure, I'll share mine. I think that once things start to normalize, or I should say once the new normal reaches us, I feel that there's still going to be a combination of what we're doing now with what we were doing before. And let me clarify. What Howard mentioned about that human connection is critical for our well-being. So I do think that offices will open back up and people will start going back to the office. However, there are positives about working from home. One of them is, for example, that you can now have maybe shared office space. So you might have people coming in shifts and do the rest of their shift from home. People who are really enjoying working from home and are saying, I'm much more productive because I'm not distracted by everyone else in the office. So I think the best of both worlds will eventually emerge. And I think we're actually going to come out on the other side much better with newer skills and finding ways in which the connection that we have with others will still be there, but we'll use the other virtual part to our benefit as well.
Very good. Very well said. Thank you so much for that. There's a question here. It's general. Any one of you can take it. It says, what has been the greatest impact on your life personally?
Let me go ahead and pick that one up because there are some practical implications of this. And so my morning has some practical physiological implications. Now, I used to pride myself on my ability to think on my feet, literally. Somehow, this new medium of delivery, the technology has become the master, and I'm now the slave. You see, I am not able to think as well sitting down as I'm now doing as when I'm standing up for some reason. I don't know why that is, and I might have to consult the physiologist to find out why. Somehow the brain power is not there when I'm sitting down. And I really relish the ability I had when I'm running a seminar to somehow walk across the room, interact with my participants, and somehow in that moment, somebody asks a question, I give a response, and that question and that response produces something that is greater than the question or the response. In other words, that was a creative moment. I don't get that feeling when I'm sitting behind a computer and I can't even see the faces of my participants. So you understand my loss. That's what I'm mourning.
All right, well said. And I truly believe that you have something there. But I also wonder about the newer, well, the generation of today that's not really, they're so driven by the computer and the tablet and the phone and all of that. If this will help them to just springboard them into the next era of just doing business. So it's very interesting, the times that we're in, and it's a ride. We'll have to just wait and see for sure. We have a question that actually came in the chat. They're asking if there are any tips to place a camera so that we get eye-to-eye contact rather than looking as we are being filmed. So I'll turn my camera on for that. I'll also, turn it over to you guys if you have any tips. But for me, I do every now and then I do, my meetings and different behind the scenes help other companies do their webinars and all that. So technically I'll be behind the scenes. But one class or etiquette class that we give is whatever you have that you are presenting. I know it's hard, and sometimes even myself, where we have a lot of controls and you have things that you are working on, and you are home and you are in the office at home or so doing switching screens and doing all of that. But if you have a script or if you have your presentation that you're given, it's better if you put the camera, put your presentation as close to the camera as possible. You want to try your best to at least remember some of your script, some of what you are trying to say, what you're conveying, so it comes off naturally. But what the most important thing is for you, wherever the camera is. So for me, the camera is right here, and I'm focusing on you and speaking to you. And every now and then I will glance at what I need to do. However, I try to, and it takes practice. It's very odd. It's very awkward because your eye will tend to look at the screen because you want to see yourself. So what you can do, Zoom allows you to actually pin your picture-in-a-picture screen that you can see yourself. So if you want, you could just pin it as close as possible to the actual camera that's recording you. That's my little tip. If anyone else has any, go ahead, but I'm going to turn my camera off again if you don't mind.
I'll share a tip as well. And this also has to do with ergonomics, which I mentioned before. You might need to elevate your screen, and if it's a laptop, elevate the laptop. If you have a monitor that's separate, sometimes you need to elevate that so that your camera is at eye level. And if you have an external camera that you're using, use the same idea of having it at eye level. And there are a few other things to keep in mind. As a matter of fact, I personally like the external camera better than I like the built-in camera that I have on my laptop. So at this very moment, I'm using an external camera, and it has an automatic zoom feature. So if I move away, it just kind of zooms into where I am. So it's very nice in that regard. But something else to keep in mind is that lighting really makes a difference. So sometimes it's not just your camera, but it's also the lighting behind you or in front of you. So you might need to play with it. Maybe a yellow light will help a little bit with, concealing some of the flaws that you have that you're, not trying to show everyone, or maybe a brighter light, so you just have to play with it and just see how it looks when you now have it, the camera on. And like Sidoni said, maybe just pin it and take a look and see what you really look like.
All right. Thank you so much. I have one person with their hand raised. I'm going to ask them and allow them to speak. They have a question. And you can unmute. This is John.
Yes, this is John. I put it in the chat, but since you got me, I'm an older adult. Now, I am working virtually, and there are factors I love about it, but I also miss that social, that interaction. It is so important, and I'm in education. But I'm also got two grandsons. I got things in my head that says, you got to be a little bit careful, protecting myself. I would feel comfortable if we had a vaccine to go person to person, but my office is going back person to person, and my boss allows me to work virtually for the time being anyway. But I also feel like I'm not fulfilling my responsibilities. Little guilt that I'm just making for myself. That's all. So what are your thoughts in reference to older adults going back before a vaccine?
I'll take it because I'm still reporting to the office when things are different, and I am in the classroom just like you. I'm an educator. There are several thoughts that go through my mind. as an adult who has family members, you know, an elderly mother, and concerns about not just contracting, but also passing it on to someone, I'm very careful. And so I'm not sure how things are in, you know, where you work, but at my job, my daytime job, they have now limited the amount of classes and the amount of students, and they're allowing students to elect whether they'd like to take a class online, or they have a blend flex model where students can come to the classroom and the class is being taught live, so that you only have a limited amount of students, but then you also have the ones that are online. So there are specific models that are trying to cater to everyone's needs. But I think at the end of the day, it comes down to our personal idea of what's safe and good for us. So if we're uncomfortable, then we might need to kind of reconsider or have a good conversation with the powers that be to see if they would accommodate us in whatever way possible. And for the most part, you see that employers are trying to work with their employees to make that happen. And if they haven't thought out of the box yet, maybe you can come up with the out of the box idea and pitch it to them and say, how about we do it this way? And you will be surprised. I mean, we're all going through this together. So you might be surprised that they will go along maybe with your idea.
All right, John, is that it? Do you have any follow-up questions to that, or did Mirella answer your question?
No, that's fine. Thank you so much for your input. I appreciate it. And my boss has been, you know, she says I can't. It's just that, you know, I really want to go in, and I got, you know, that conflict within myself. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Thank you, John. We have another question that's in the chat. It says, are we perceived as less professional if we use a pad rather than sitting in front of the computer?
If we use a what?
If we use a pad, I think that's like an iPad or a device, you know, just to do the Zoom as opposed to sitting in front of a computer.
I don't think so. I think a lot of it has to do with what is shown in the camera. Like what are you showing? What's your background? People don't necessarily see what you're using, what device you're using. Like, for example, the way I'm sitting now, you don't know if I'm using my phone or if I'm using my computer, if it's a desktop or a laptop. So it's not something that's visible unless you place your camera in a way that now the person on the other side can clearly see you. But I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. I think we are now really in a situation where people are more open-minded to the needs of everyone. And not everybody can have a computer. Not everybody can afford to have one. Some people use their phone for their Zoom meetings. As long as we're just cognizant of our backgrounds. I've been in meetings where people are driving in their car and they have their camera on. That might not be the best idea, because not everybody can see your brow and see, you know, the movements in the background. So in that case, and if you're uncomfortable, you always have the option to keep your camera off and say, you know, if your boss requires it, say, today I can't have it on, and they hopefully will respect your privacy.
All right, very good. We are getting to the top of the hour, so I just want to be cognizant of everyone's time. We will ask one more question and do our wrap up right after so that we get everyone's questions answered. All right, so this last question that we're going to address, it says, how can businesses keep the strong relationship of their workers? I think that you guys addressed some of it before, and we do have another session coming up in 2 weeks, the 22nd, that is specifically about managing your team, recruiting, you know, all of the important stuff that you do when you have a team or you're working with independent contractors, as a lot of us do work with independent contractors when you're home. So that session is coming on the 22nd, but please do, Mirella, if you don't mind, this one is asking how to keep the relationship strong with your workers.
Okay, so aside from having regular meetings to discuss work-related issues, I think it's also nice to offer something like a virtual happy hour. where we're getting together, not because we're working, but we're just having some downtime. And rather than just having people come and it gets a little awkward because people don't always know what to say, build in an activity, something where people get to know one another better. It creates a sense of camaraderie, and it also creates a sense of, hey, I can relax, it's okay, and I'm now building that relationship with my coworkers. So that's definitely something to keep in mind.
All right, wonderful. Great, absolutely great tip. For sure. If you don't mind going to the next slide, I think your information is on there, just for the people who like to take screenshots and all of that, just in case they would want to be able to contact you. Next Level Educators, they, if you guys could tell me if I'm, you guys could clear this up, but they work with different, individuals, and they also work with companies with, managing their employees, and they do a lot of different type of presentations, seminars, workshops, you name it. They could be your personal coach. I actually attended one of their seminars, and it was a workshop to work on you, to work on myself, to work on everyone that was there, and it was phenomenal. We got homework to take home, and just different points to touch on, and it really allowed us, everyone that participated, to just take a step back and look at ourselves and just to plan the life that we really want to live. And they're phenomenal with this. So definitely feel free to reach out to them. Again, their information is right there on the screen.
If I might say, Sidoni, I think the exciting part of what we do is the customized section. Everything becomes tailored to the particular client. And we simply create with the client a whole sense of this is about you, and you are different and you are unique.
Wonderful. All right. So now we are at the end of our program. I want to just remind you that you can always go to our website and just to check out the different services that we offer to small businesses for free. If you are in need of any assistance at all, especially if you're impacted by COVID-19, do remember that you can give us a call. We will set up an appointment with you, and then we'll help you along the way. Just the little milestones that you can take in order to get to the place that you need to. You'll be surprised how many people in the last few months have really reshaped their business just because they have the time, or they're not busy running around and doing things all the time. So Mirella had mentioned that productivity is up, and I saw a study myself, and that was really encouraging for people that want to work from home, people that want to continue their life with their families and just be able to work from anywhere. And that's the new phrase, right? But as Howard said, we do need this human interaction, the human touch. So for someone that's a professional in a meeting and events industry, we get excited when we hear that people want to get together again. Of course, we try to do everything as safely as possible and to take the best measures to combat COVID-19. And as we wait for the vaccine or whatever to come about, we definitely try to make sure that we are operating in the best way possible. So, this session has been very encouraging. The next one, like I mentioned, will be on mostly just managing your team, and more specifically recruiting. How do you hire someone that you've never really met? How do you trust that initial interaction? Do you have to now meet them a few times and just do a virtual session with them? Now that's the world that we are in, right? So this is something that's it's a need, especially for the small business that have employees that are not high-level employees. They're the ones that will need to, every now and then you have to coach or maintain, or you may have to be watching that clock, may have to check into them with them. How do you manage that? Now, this program is designed to address those things, as well as, like I said, the recruiting factor of it. Again, thank you so much to Next Level Educators. They have been phenomenal. I have learned a lot. I am hoping to continue this talk and to continue this conversation because I know that you guys are really good at that. And so anyone, I encourage you to reach out to them. They're very good at following up, and they're very good with the material that they provide. They could speak on any topic, and I am going to say that with confidence because if they don't know 100% about it, they're great researchers. And as I mentioned before, I've learned yesterday through a webinar that when you teach, you learn twice. So can you imagine their brain power and their knowledge, everything that they have? Again, thank you so much. Any last words? I'll turn it over to both of you, Mirella and Howard. This has been phenomenal.
Well, thanks for having us. And for those of you out there who might be going through what I'm going through, I want to say, let's do this journey together. Thanks for joining us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I'm happy that we were able to join this session. I'd also like to thank Sidoni for inviting us. And we really hope that you're going to reach out to us so that we can make a connection with you and guide you along the way and hopefully learn from you as well. So thank you.
All righty. Well, everyone, be safe and continue to support our free small business webinars. The reason why we have them is because of you. The reason why we choose our topics is because of whether the feedback, the surveys, or when I'm speaking to a small business, I'll learn that, oh, they may need, this is a good topic to talk about because the world may need to know it. So whether you're live or you're watching, you're going to go back and watch one of our sessions that we have had in the past. We just want to provide information, fuel you with information that you can make your business stronger, you can be more whole, and we can just get out of this COVID-19 together. So thank you so much, and you have a wonderful day, and of course, be safe.
Good luck, everyone.
Bye-bye.